Subscribe our channel 13 and press that bell icon to get an instant update of our latest content. For today's podcast, let me read out an excerpt from my morning journals, something that I had written on 13 June this year. The job of a pen is to facilitate writing. Facilitating writing is not writing itself. Writing need not mean that it's always a creation. Creation need not mean that it's always good. And good need not mean that it's good for all. The good here is contextual, creation is subjective, and what gets written is beyond the control of the pen, and therefore the pen cannot get disheartened by the fact that whatever it facilitates may or may not be worthwhile. But it simply does its job, it simply keeps writing. In this context, I want to bring attention to those few days when you notice that when you write, you feel connected with it. And I personally connected well with this one text. I guess because when I'm talking from the context of the pen's job is only to look at taking actions. And it cannot think or worry about what are the consequences of its writing. Its job is only to take actions in the direction of what it is meant to, in the direction of its purpose, and not worry about many other things that can come along. So, I'm trying to see this in my context as well, that a lot of times when I'm involved in the process of designing, I'm also anticipating that the other stakeholders, let's say the clients and the other collaborators, are equally aligned with our or with my intent. And if that does not happen, then sometimes I get bothered by it. But if I think, then my only job here is to take actions in a direction that I intend to. As a person involved with designing landscape and working closely with nature, my job then is to only focus on how can I restore and strengthen the landscape, the nature, the ecology to the best in my capacity, and then not worry beyond that. And while I do, I too can see that the best in my capacity may not be the best possible solution or may not really be good for all. That's the context that I'm coming when I initiate this topic from the point of view of pen for the podcast.
So, right. So, I think when you mentioned about writing, I see one aspect of it is the job of a pen is to write. Same way, when we are looking at our own actions, one important thing which we miss a lot when it comes to action is the association of values for those actions. As you said, while speaking also you were able to in a way talk about your values, like when it comes to your actions there is some association with your core values which is
Mm,
leading to those actions. Action just for the sake of action might be meaningless also at times. And I'm not talking from the work which is done or the activity which a person is involved. Maybe cleaning a floor can also be a very meaningful action, uh, provided it has the right context and a associated core value with it. So same way, when it comes to pen, a pen's job is of writing, but then the writer's job, what to write, what not to write, is something which he or she decides. So the point is that the writing gets the context after it getting its association with those core values.
mm. No, very true. But also, I think that association is nothing but a story. A lot of times, I also sense that, that I'm talking about my uh, role as a landscape urbanist to preserve nature or to bring nature into spaces that we design and so on and so forth. But to me, at some level, I also start realizing that it is just a story that I created
Hmm.
so that I stick to my core values. And that story has, if I sometimes look at it into from a very existential point of view, I find that that story has no meaning. But knowing that I have to still be with that story because that is the story which inspires me the most. And it reminds me of uh, the scene from Life of Pi, as we speak, where Irfan Khan gives the reporter two stories. And so the reporter, actually, the interviewer, is able to decode that tiger is you, orangutan is your mother, and so on and so forth. And Irfan Khan says, yeah, in both of the stories, we don't know how the ship sank, how did I end up on the coast, or what really happened. uh, Now which of the story do you want to pick? And he says, I'll go one with the tiger. And Irfan Khan's one response is,
Hmm.
and so it goes with God. And that moment, I was completely shook by that scene particularly, because for me, that particular s- sentence, the way Irfan Khan also says, it just completely took me over, and now also I'm speechless as I
Absolutely.
recollect.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I fully get that what you're saying. So if you look at our own lives, uh, we have these multiple stories which are running, or which we are running rather, and then those stories give context, and those stories, when they give the context, inside of those contexts we take actions. Now let us take a simple action like going for a walk. Now if there is a story of health and fitness which is really inspiring to you, which is really true or real for you, only then you will go and take that action. Because many a times I keep thinking, why do we act and why do we don't act rather, which is more important question. Especially when you started this write up of yours, I was looking about writing as an action for that matter. So many people want to start writing, and it's a very magical process, it's a very interesting process, but then somehow people don't do it. And again, it's the same thing. There are a lot of things which are in their story which doesn't allow them to take that action. The story can be that I might not write well, people will laugh at me, I am not a good writer, I don't have good grammar, I am not from a particular school of thought, or whatever it can be. And those things keep the person away. But we are not talking about the Shakespearean writing or a particular style of writing. So in that way, all those blockages
Mhm.
are just a story built by a person himself or herself. And if they are such a big storyteller, they should start writing.
So I actually, I can totally relate to this because I don't know, I must have bought at least 100 journals, and I'm not kidding. You can come and check my shelf. These are empty books, and I would have done this exercise of buying this notebook, good quality notebook, from the time when I was in class 5, because my dad used to write diary. I mean, he still writes, and I know personally the longest writing person, because he has this daily ritual. Every day evening he writes, and he has been doing that since he was 22. Today he is 63, which means 41 years he has a collection of those diaries. And every day, I don't know what he writes. He says that it empties him. Now, I used to get fascinated by that, and I'd started first time writing in class 5. I think I wrote for 2 days, and then the phase went off. So every time I had done that, it went off. But this time when I've been doing it now, it's almost like, I don't know, more than 2 years or whatever. But what now I'm feeling here is that this is to stay, and the only difference that I observe is that earlier my association with writing was somebody else is doing, and I was romanticizing with that idea of writing. People talk so much about it, and this and that, and I would start, and this is not really that great. I mean, this is such a banal act of just writing. But to be very honest, for everybody, every time I had looked at this and I would write it in the evening and all, for me, I accidentally discovered this experience of writing in the morning, and it is a process of catharsis. And so for some it may work in the morning, for some it may work in the evening, but morning really, because it starts your day with emptying yourself, and that emptying is now sort of necessary, and it allows me to just write out thoughts which are there. Now this conversation which I read, written it in the most abstract manner. I'm not really one of the good writers, and yet this happened. So this, I feel, according to my standards, is a good text, and I keep coming back to it. But if I read some other random entry, you'll think that what is this crazy nonsense? It is actually gibberish. It does not make sense. But just doing that, and in a immersed manner, with experiencing each moment with total involvement, I think allows me to clear uh, sort of mental clutter, you can say.
Yeah. So Shantesh, when you said that you have this set of books which are empty, which you started with collecting the books but not writing, it just reminded me of George Orwell's quote, where he says, "If you want to keep a secret, you must also hide it from yourself." So empty books are a kind of indication of hiding secrets from yourself, your own secret. So, so the point is, as you rightly said, it helps in catharsis, and most importantly for me, when it came to writing, same story again. Have been thinking about it, wanted to start, could not write, but then I realized that first thing is that my first draft is my draft. There is no one going to read it, so I can write whatever I want. And the
Hmm.
second thing which clicked me very well was that I should get it done rather than thinking about getting it right. So
Hmm.
every time I used to think about making it right, that was the big stoppage. So these are the kind of stories. Even while speaking, you just mentioned, I know that I am not a good writer. Now that's again a story which you have created. It's not nobody's
Hmm.
business to tell how good or bad writer one is. So
Yeah.
it's absolutely okay to be the way, and there is also no particular style of writing. Everyone has their own. It's like trying to frame around expression. You cannot frame and tell that this is the right way to express. Everyone has their own way
Hmm.
of expressing. They use their accents, they use their styles, they use their facial expressions, they use their voice modulation. I don't know, but
Or sometimes silence.
or sometimes silence, which is a very powerful way of expressing and a very dominating way. But then people use their own expressions, as you rightly said. So it's absolutely fine to express in whatever way one can, and that leads to action. So the pen will start writing or doing its job only when the writer wants to do it, and the writer has to stop one story to start one story.
Absolutely. I think, coming back to this topic of actions, I also personally sensed this, because initially when I started writing here, uh, there were days I can now recollect that, what is this I'm doing? At this time, actually, nobody had told me. And I said, okay, I had bought this beautiful, super expensive book in Berlin, and I said that, when I come, I'll write something meaningful. And day two, I was trying to uh, just see from day one what my handwriting was, and I said that, my God, how can I treat this like the homework book that we all in schools used to have, the rough book, basically what we used to call homework book. It was literally like that I'm treating it. And so I said, okay, next day I'll just write a little better. And I tried, and I failed. And I said, okay, but I should still write, I should still write, I should still write. And there were days where taking me to that book was dreadful, but to do that, and I think around day 35, 40, maybe a month into it, is what I started sensing, that I was able to just be with the act of writing and just do it. When I did that ongoingly, it has now become part of my lifestyle. And whenever I'm traveling, even if there's an early morning flight, I've ensured that I keep that 10 or 15 minutes, whatever is required, aside. And it is important, I see it in my own life. And taking that action has allowed me to take a glimpse into this different dimension, I'd say.
Right. So while you were sharing about this expensive notebook which you purchased, I think there is a bigger lesson in that, or insight for me, is that many a times what we do is we keep things for the right moment. Whether it is a perfume or a dress or a expensive pen, we keep them for the right moment. So for me, even a Moleskine is a very expensive notebook, and when I purchased my first Moleskine by paying money, not something which has been gifted to me by anyone, but a paid money paid thing. I just want to read that from that book which I have found the write up, so I can quickly read.
Yeah, please.
It took me time to start writing in this notebook. This is my first purchase moleskin. I think in past I was gifted one, so this was different. I wanted to keep this clean. What does it say about me, my writing, and how I see and relate things? First thing which comes to my mind is about my handwriting. As I do not have a good handwriting, I will just spoil this notebook. The second thing is about the content. How it's still not the best content, and how this conversation that I'm going to write is meaningless and I'm wasting pages in this good beautiful notebook. So I think from my if my life matters, then what I express in my writing may also matter. If my life doesn't matter, then whether I write it on a moleskin or on any other notebook, it anyways doesn't matter. So I have to write today. I may not like it, I may like it, I don't know. I may also find better ways to maintain the book. That is all fine. I can now clearly see how, by initiating the writing process, I am able to make my thoughts flow freely. I can see how I can express my emotions, ideas, feelings, and views about things that are important to me and my life. So I don't want to read too much, but then I just want to show you the transformation which happened in the flow of my thoughts. I started writing by questioning whether I should write it in this book or not in the first place. And from there, clearly see how my emotions, thoughts, my actions started getting a rhythmic flow. And then formation of words, completion of sentences, creation of paragraphs, all started happening very smoothly. And for myself, I could experience that I could get better grip on the whole topic of writing from there. And otherwise, as I said, I would have kept it for the right day to start it in the right way, which I don't know when it comes here.
And as paraphrasing Irfan Khan, so it goes with our podcasting. That we were thinking for the longest time. I remember that let us start this podcast. We will have to do a lot of work for this. We have to prepare. I don't know. We bought this mics uh, 3 months ago,
Yes.
3 or 4 months ago. As soon as Amazon started shipping post lockdown, we have immediately done the first thing is to buy microphones, and it has been lying around on the desk for I don't know. And then these are happening. I don't even know if these conversations are valuable, not valuable. I'm not the one to decide on that. The audience, uh, it is their job to decide, and our job is only to be aware of what we are giving. It's not that we talk nonsense, but at the same time, we try to be uh, taking focusing on actions rather than worrying too much about whether we are doing right thing, wrong thing. All that conversation has to be kept aside,
Yeah,
I
and so
think.
honestly, Shantish, even I am not bothered about what we are talking, whether it is sensible or nonsense, simply because otherwise, what is the alternative? Okay, so then what you are saying is what you watch on televisions every day in the news. Is that sensible? I don't know. So if this is nonsense, so be it.
Yeah. So let's complete the conversation here. And uh, yeah,
Yeah, so I
I
think
think
one action which comes to my mind from the audience point of view also to think about is what are the things which they have kept, which they want to use someday, and they have not been using it for whatever reason, for waiting for their second inning to start. I think they should
yeah,
start their second inning as soon as possible. And the
yeah,
other question which comes is on the writing and action point of view, which you mentioned that action are something which you the as they say the test of pudding is in the eating of it, same way it goes for actions. So all ideas are cheap. They are not just cheap, I would say. In today's world, ideas are free. What matters is implementation. So
mm,
ideas are very low hanging fruits. The game changer is actions with
purely
creativity.
action.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you see with these startups, you keep hearing the stories, or you also see for yourself a lot of times that, oh, this startup is doing such a wonderful thing. And if you see the idea or the concept behind that product that they are delivering, it's really nothing. And you think that thousands of people would have thought, but that one person, the person who started that company, took the
Absolutely,
action.
and that's why I said ideas are cheap, because if you in Bangalore or I in Mumbai, if we go and sit in a nearby bar on a Friday evening, you will get 200 ideas at the end of 1 hour.
Yeah, true. With that, we complete our today's podcast. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for listening. For more such podcasts and daily blogs, subscribe us on creating13.com. That is creating13.com. For 6 days a week, we write blogs on such topics with an intent to promote everyday writing. These blogs are inspired by our own writings, a morning ritual that we religiously follow. We hope that these texts will provide some fodder for thought for an inner inquiry. We believe that writing each day allows one to observe life as is, and it brings a genuine clarity from within. You can follow us on our Twitter or Instagram handle, creating_13, or on our Facebook page, creating13. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we wish to have you with us again next week for listening a new episode on a new topic. Until then, take care.